Today we're going to talk about why the no contact rule is so important. Now, this is a topic that I've talked about a lot on this YouTube channel, so much so that sometimes I even get sick of talking about it, where I'll go entire months without even mentioning it in a video because I feel like it's overkill. But one really interesting thing about the no contact rule is when I was looking over the history of the videos that I produced on the no contact rule and my stance on it, I've never really made an assertion on why I believe it is so important for the average person to do a no contact rule pretty much in every breakup that you can imagine. So that's what this video is essentially going to be. It's going to be me talking about why I believe the no contact rule is so important. And if you stick around until the end, not only am I going to show you the psychological reasons for why the no contact rule is such a good idea, but I'm also going to give you kind of our updated version in 2021 of what the no contact rule is. You see, for the past 5 years, I've always talked about the no contact rule with the same specific definition. But recent findings from our team has caused me to kind of reshape or refocus the way we're looking at the no contact rule. And for that, I would like to update the definition so that I can officially show you how I believe the average person should be using the no contact rule. What is the no contact rule, updated for 2021? Simply put, the no contact rule is a period of time where you ignore your ex on purpose. The intent of this tactic should not be used to make your ex miss you, but instead should be used to rebuild your own life so that you can outgrow your ex. By doing this, the no contact rule can have the added benefit of making an ex miss you. So, what are the big changes? Well, in the past, I've talked about the no contact rule as having the ability to do two things. And while that's still technically true, I think the intent of how you use the no contact rule is vitally important to your overall success. So in the past, I've talked about the no contact rule as this strategy that can give you time to kind of rebuild your life, but at the same time, make your ex miss you. We've actually found that if you go into using a no contact rule on your ex with the simple intent of making them miss you, you miss the entire point of the no contact rule. And more often than not, as I'm going to prove to you later in this video, your ex doesn't miss you because you are extremely anxious, and that just kind of comes through. So the intent of how you use the no contact rule is very important to your overall chances of success with the no contact rule. Now, speaking of success, what do our statistics say about the no contact rule and how effective it can be? Well, one of the things that I'm most proud of about ex-boyfriend recovery and ex-girlfriend recovery, or any of our ex-recovery properties, is the fact that we have so many success stories. We're one of the few outfits out there that is willing to sit down with real people and have long conversations with them so that we can actually understand what they did that worked versus what they did that didn't work. And what's interesting is the more success stories that we have, the more we learn about the effectiveness of the no contact rule. So I want to give you some of the statistics that we've seen with regards to our success stories and the no contact rule. So 5 years ago, I pulled success stories and found about 70% of them have used a no contact rule. 2 years ago, I pulled the private Facebook support group that we have and found that 90% of the people in that group who have gotten their exes back have used some form of no contact. And finally, in 2020, I polled my specific one-on-one coaching clients and found that 98% of them have used a no contact rule of some form to get their exes back. So what I'm showing you there is not only is the no contact rule an extremely vital part of the process of not only getting over an ex, but getting an ex back. But I'm also showing you how we're learning more about the no contact rule and it's becoming more and more and more effective. So 5 years ago, like I said, I asked the success stories on my website, just a general email blast to people who had taken our quiz and said, hey, if you've used our program to get your ex back, did you use a no contact rule? 70% of people replied and said they did. The 30% that did say they got their exes back never even told us if they actually used a no contact rule or not. They simply said, yeah, we got our exes back using our program. They didn't specify the exact tactics that they essentially used. So that 70% number could actually be higher. But what's interesting is Just 2 years ago, in 2018, I actually polled people in our private Facebook support group and said, hey, those of you who've gotten your exes back, how many of you have used a no contact rule? We found that 90% of people were saying, yeah, we've used a no contact rule. Why? Well, we're getting better at teaching why the no contact rule is so important to use. And of course, in 2020, just a few months ago, I polled my clients and they told me that 98% of them have used a no contact rule to get their exes back. And I think, and I truly believe this, one of the reasons that we're having so much success with the no contact rule on our side of the fence is because of the intent or the change that I talked about at the beginning of this video with regards to the no contact rule definition. We don't look at the no contact rule as a simple way of making your ex miss you. That is actually a side effect of the rebuilding your own life and kind of outgrowing your ex. Then they miss you. Because we've noticed people who go into the no contact rule with the intent of using the no contact rule as essentially this play hard to get strategy, they end up doing the exact opposite. Their ex doesn't miss them at all, and then they're wondering, why didn't this no contact rule work? That's why I think as time has gone on, our no contact rule results have gotten better and better and better. But if we're being honest here, you want me to talk about the psychology of playing hard to get and why that works and why the no contact rule can do that. And I actually have some research to back up that and why I think the no contact rule is so important to use after a breakup. Now, the obvious reason for why you would want to use a no contact rule after a breakup is, of course, that yes, it can give yourself time to kind of let your emotions go down. It will help make your ex miss you and all of the stuff that I've talked about before. But what I'd like to do is prove to you that it can do these things from real life psychologists. So in 2020, the duo of Gurit Birnbaum, who's basically a social psychologist and associate professor of psychology at the IDC Herzliya, and Harry Reis, a professor of psychology and Dean's Professor in Arts, Sciences, and Engineering at the University of Rochester, discovered that immediately reciprocating another person's interest may not be the smartest strategy for attracting mates. So, what's going on here? Well, these two psychologists have basically proved, with that statement that I just read, that being forthright with your feelings with someone is not usually the smartest strategy of partnering up with someone. Not anything mind-blowing there. But that's not what they were studying. They were studying playing hard to get. And they ran the people or contestants of this test through multiple different trials. And some of their findings, I think, are going to be revolutionary for you in understanding why the no contact rule is so important. So let's back up for a minute. We know that the no contact rule is essentially this period of time where you're ignoring your ex, meaning they reach out to you, you ignore it. You have an urge to reach out to them, you ignore that. That is the hardcore definition of playing hard to get. So psychologically, let's understand if that strategy can even work. And that's sort of why I'm pulling from these psychologists who did this test. So a basic human principle is that we tend to like people who like us. Psychologists have kind of termed this the reciprocity of attraction. This principle generally works well to start relationships because it reduces the likelihood of rejection. Yet making the chase harder also has upsides. So that statement is another basic understanding. We find that at the start of relationships, we're feeling really good if our attraction is reciprocal from the other party. Meaning when you get into a relationship, the best part of that relationship, generally speaking, is the honeymoon period. That's where both of you are reciprocal in your attraction. Your girlfriend or your boyfriend does something and you reciprocate that. Feels great. But that same principle doesn't necessarily work well when you're not dating. And that's an important thing to understand here if we're going to dissect the no contact rule, because whether you like it or not, you're not dating your ex anymore. The rules and the landscape are different and have changed. So I guess the real question is why? Why is it that when you're attracted to someone, coming right out and just telling them, hey, I want you back, doesn't work? Well, according to the geniuses, the psychologists that are running this study that I'm talking about, here's what they had to say. People who are too easy to attract may actually be perceived as more desperate, says Birnbaum. That makes them seem less valuable and appealing, than those who do not make their romantic interest apparent right away. So already we're learning here. The landscape of your situation is different from someone who is just generally trying to win a guy or win a girl who's never dated them before. Your ex knows that you have a romantic sort of partnership or you have a romantic history to draw upon. They already know that you like them. So to them, you begging for them back, asking for them back, being upfront with what you want doesn't necessarily work because it makes you look desperate. This is even doubly true when we get into some of the attachment things that we learn. Most of our clients are anxious attachment styles, meaning they're overly crazy about blowing their ex's phone up, showing up at their doorstep. They seem really anxious when things don't go their way, and this just makes them seem what? More desperate. So Birnbaum and the other dude who ran this cool thing, they ran all their contestants through this study to find out what they could learn about people who play hard to get versus people who don't play hard to get. People who, I guess, just normally try to attract exes. Here were their findings. A person who is perceived as hard to get is associated with greater mate value. Nothing revolutionary here. This is something that we already kind of knew. Playing hard to get works. But it's the other two findings that I think are very interesting. Finding number 2. Study participants made greater efforts on and found more sexually desirable those potential dates they perceived as hard to get. And finding number 3, study participants made greater efforts to see those again for whom they had made efforts in the first place. In other words, if you have to jump through hoops, if the person you're trying to get is not easy, if you are ungettable, guess what? You're perceived as having higher value. This essentially is the number one reason for why the no contact rule is so important. But it doesn't exactly explain why we find that people who come into the no contact rule with this intent of playing hard to get doesn't really see that result. And I think for that, we need to kind of put our detective hats on and look at the study and understand why is it that people look at playing hard to get as this attractive or difficult person to get? Why does that raise their value in their eyes? And for that, I think we need to kind of really, truly understand, and I wouldn't have been able to do this without me interviewing multiple success stories, but what works? What works in getting exes back? Well, a lot of people point at the no contact rule as being this essential metamorphosis start, this catalyst for this metamorphosis that they go through. And for the longest time, I was trying to understand, why are people going through this metamorphosis? Is it them playing hard to get? No, we find that the people who come into the no contact rule with an intent of playing hard to get don't get the desirable result. It's something deeper than that. A lot of our success stories, we noticed, were getting to this point where they didn't want their exes back anymore. They kind of outgrew their ex, or they didn't really feel strongly about it one way or another. And the no contact rule is something that they would consistently point at as to where that happened. And that's why when I reframed the no contact rule at the beginning of this video and said this is about outgrowing your ex, it's powerful and it really revolves around attachment styles. One thing we know about secure attachment styles is, generally speaking, when a secure attachment style is dating someone, they don't overcrowd that person. They don't necessarily play hard to get either. So the general rule we've noticed from secure attachment people is that when they're dating someone and that person pulls back, they also pull back. So it's almost like they mirror the other person's behavior, and the other person thinks that they're playing hard to get when they're really not. They're just doing what a normal secure person would do. They're thinking that person must need time. I'll just chill over here. My life isn't all about them. I have bigger things to worry about. And that's the key. You see, playing hard to get, I think, psychologically works in the overall landscape of things, right? You play hard to get if you're trying to get that person. You're not too available. You're available a little bit, but not too available. This is deemed as playing hard to get. But why doesn't that work for the average person trying to get their exes back? Well, it's simply because if your ex broke up with you, then they probably know that you want them back if you're talking to them. And the no contact rule kind of shifts that perception, but it doesn't really fully work unless you feel secure. You feel confident with yourself. You feel like you're really comfortable in your own skin. You don't need your ex anymore. It would be cool if they came back, but that's cool if they don't. That's the mindset we need to get you to in the no contact rule to have the best results. Here's another thing. we're learning about the no contact rule and why it's so important. Don't fail it. Around 80% of people who try the no contact rule through our program fail it. Now, what does failing mean? That means they try to ignore their ex, and then after a week, their ex sends some sob story, tries to make them feel guilty, and they break it and talk to their ex. Then they have to start no contact over again. But what those people don't realize, or what I haven't made clear enough, is that every single time that you have to start a no contact rule over, guess what happens? It loses effectiveness. The best analogy I can say is, it's like watching the same movie over and over and over and over again. The first time you see that movie, it's amazing. Everything's so vivid. You want to watch it again. The second time you watch that movie, it's still amazing. You want to watch it again. The third time, okay, you know the words, you know the scenes, you know what's gonna happen. You still like it, it's still pretty good, but it's not like the first time or even that second time. The fourth time! Oh, why am I watching this movie? This is getting kind of boring. I'm gonna wait. The no contact rule works the same way. And it also really, I know I'm getting kind of long here and this is getting really technical, but it also, if you're failing the no contact rule consistently, you set up this pattern of anxious behavior. You seem like someone who can't stick to something. You seem like someone who doesn't have any discipline, and your ex kind of picks up on that subconsciously, even if you're not communicating with them verbally. All right, so obviously the no contact rule is super important, and it's kind of a really big debate among the industry on if you should use a no contact rule or not. And one of the things that I've learned lately is it's about the intent of how you use a no contact rule that matters more than anything else. What are your thoughts on why the no contact rule is so important? Let me know in the comments below. And also, if you haven't taken the Ex Recovery Chances quiz that I always talk about on these videos, it's probably a good idea to take it and get yourself started. You know, taking the quiz is super easy. Just look in the description below and click the blue link you see there. It will take you right to the quiz where you can kind of figure out what kind of chance you have of getting your ex back, and where you should start, whether you should not be trying to get that person back or where you should be trying to get this person back, and what you should be doing. Also, if you haven't liked, commented, or subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do so. Every little bit helps. I'll see you next time.